do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today I wanted to talk about LaMarcus Aldridge. Very similar to yesterday's video on PJ Tucker, LaMarcus Aldridge and the Spurs have decided that they will part ways. Greg Popovich said it himself prior to a game the other day, saying that they basically agreed that it's best for both sides to work out a resolution, whether that's going to be a trade or a buyout or something. But it's incredibly likely that LaMarcus Aldridge will no longer be on the Spurs when the trade deadline passes in just a couple weeks from now. So this is an interesting one, considering his contract situation, his age, his the history of him with the Spurs and all that. And I just wanted to go over a couple teams that might be a good fit for him, and how he would potentially end up there. So this first one here is a trade, and honestly, I think this is the only trade that really makes sense, and it's to the Miami Heat. I had mentioned this yesterday, but the Heat are in a unique position on this trade market because they have a couple of big expiring contracts that they can use to match salary. Not a lot of other teams have that luxury. A lot of the, any other team that's looking to make a deal is dealing with guys who are in their rotation or big parts of their team or their future or whatever it may be. Whereas the Heat have two guys who are relatively expendable. We know Myers Leonard has made himself expendable based on the events of the last week or so. We kind of talked about that. And Kelly Olynyk, while he's a good player and he's in the Heat's rotation, is certainly, at $12.1 million, a little bit of an overpay, and if they're going to try to upgrade, they probably will. So Kelly Olynyk is a guy that could potentially be thrown into a trade, and you put these two together, you get right about to the number that LaMarcus Aldridge is at. Throw in that pick to sweeten the pot for San Antonio, and you pretty much have yourself a deal. I think this one makes sense for both teams. For San Antonio, they're getting a pick out of it. If I was them, I could see them maybe asking for KZ Okpala or, another second round pick in the future, just because, you're not getting much out of this. You might as well just buy him out and not have to, deal with taking on the money of Leonard and Olynyk. But, maybe if you want Kelly Olynyk for their stretch run here, because the Spurs are a playoff team, so they could potentially bring in Olynyk and have him play minutes for them. Leonard is hurt and probably wouldn't be playing anyway. So you're getting the pick and Olynyk, so maybe they view this as a positive trade for them. But like I said, this is really the only trade that I can see happening, just because Miami's really the only team that can take on this amount of money without having to be too hurt, giving up other contracts. There's other teams out there that have the bad contracts to do it, but they're not teams that would be interested in Aldridge, because he's probably going to want to go to a contender and somebody who's going to be a competitive team, whereas like the Cavaliers could do it, the Heat could do it, or not the Heat, the Chicago Bulls could with the Otto Porter thing, or there's plenty of other teams out there that probably wouldn't be interested in LaMarcus Aldridge that could make the money work. So this is really the only trade that I could see happening. As far as other teams that might be interested, I think pretty much every contender in the league would at least have some level of interest if he were to hit the buyout market, similar to the PJ Tucker thing. He's just a good player. Good players, that come available for a very low price. I think pretty much every good team is going to be interested in that. These four I picked specifically for a couple of reasons. One, they're different from the teams I talked about yesterday. I think all five of those would also be interested here. Those being the Nets, Bucks, Lakers, Heat, and Nuggets. I think all five of those, similar PJ Tucker, similar thing here. And then these four also, some of these teams have been rumored, specifically Portland. Maybe he goes back to the Blazers. It seemed like he enjoyed his time there. Maybe he wants to link back up with Damian Lillard and try to run it back with that old squad. That would be kind of interesting. And they do actually kind of have a need at that position as well. So if they can get him on the buyout market, that'd be kind of interesting. LA Clippers, I think also another contender. They're just going to be looking to get talent, and maybe just to try to keep him away from the Lakers. That could be a possibility. I think Golden State was rumored for him around the deadline, or not the deadline, the NBA draft last year. I remember hearing rumors about LaMarcus Aldridge and the Warriors and stuff. I would assume that they would probably still be interested. I hope they don't trade for him. As a Warriors fan, please don't trade for him. That would just be dumb, like giving up Kelly Oubre and other stuff. It's dumb. But on the buyout market, it's definitely intriguing. If you can get him on the roster just on a veteran minimum contract, I definitely would be interested in that. Boston Celtics theoretically could also make a trade because they have that big exception, but I would imagine they'd probably want to use it on something else. So that would be, another one on the buyout market. They're also in need of depth, at the big man spots down low. So that would be another team that could potentially be interested here. So all four of these guys, I think all five of the teams I talked about yesterday. You could also even go further: Phoenix Suns, Utah Jazz, The Sixers, even though they're kind of set at the big man positions, you know, pretty much every contender out there. I think if you look at the top of the conference, there's going to be a ton of teams that are interested, just because this is a former All-Star with pedigree, and he's a guy who's been around the league for a while. So while he hasn't been great lately, it would make sense. You know, he's going to get a job somewhere, and I think contenders will be interested across the board. So I think what's going to ultimately end up happening here is the Spurs are going to call the Miami Heat and say, hey, do you want to do this deal for, you know, Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round pick? And the Heat are either going to say yes or they're going to say no. If they say yes, that deal's going to happen. If they say no, then they're going to hang up the phone, and the Spurs are going to try to call around to like 3 or 4 other teams. Nobody's going to bite, and then they're going to decide to buy him out at the deadline. That's what I feel like is going to happen. I feel like really the only trade that I can realistically see taking place is the Miami Heat. Now, obviously, I could be wrong. There could be another team that comes out of the woodwork and offers something here, but pretty much all these contenders are not going to want to give up the contracts required to get to the number for a guy who could very easily hit the buyout market anyway. It's similar to the Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin things that we've been seeing, where, like, yes, teams do want the players on their roster, but they don't want them so bad that they're willing to give up, you know, rotation guys and value and assets and stuff. So I think for the most part, a lot of these interested teams here are going to play it by ear, wait for the deadline to pass, potentially a buyout to go down, and then from there we'll see sort of a race to try to get him to sign. But yeah, this is shaping up to be a really interesting trade deadline, a really interesting buyout market. Let me know down below if there's anything else you guys would like to hear me talk about, any other players specifically, any other deals that happened that you would like a full breakdown of. Would love to hear your thoughts on that down below. But yeah, like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.